I wouldn't change it. Like, I put everything that I had. I wasn't like, oh, like we're gonna lose, like, so I'm not gonna. Like, I worked really hard, and probably as the year got longer, I worked even harder, and it was worth it. Like, I love doing it, and I love pouring into kids, and so in the end, when the season was over, like it was tough. Even though we hadn't won anything, like we like giving my heart away for free, knowing the end that it might get broken was a great lesson for me.
What's up, people? Welcome to the Dear Young Athlete podcast, where we talk with coaches and athletes about their journeys and what advice they would give to a younger version of themselves. I'm your host, Jacob Thompson. You can call me JT. If you want to hear my story, why I do this, that's episode number 1. But enough about me. Today, I have a very special guest. The man joining me today, he is a husband. He's a former collegiate football and baseball player. He is a head high school football coach and a high school baseball coach. He actually was my baseball coach in high school. That's where we met, and I have a funny story about that later. This man is a man of God, and I loved being coached by him, and I'm looking forward to this episode. So without further ado, Kris Pulford. Pulford, how are you feeling?
Feeling all right. Feeling all right. We just got done with practice, and so I just downed a little bit of water, and now I'm ready to go.
I love it. Well, we will jump in. You played college football and baseball. Now you're a coach. But where did it all begin for you? How did you fall in love with playing sports?
Yeah, my parents really never pressured me into going into sports. I remember I don't remember this specifically, but in 1991, well, I do remember a lot of the specifics. 1991, the Twins were in the World Series, and my mom was cutting out every single article possible, and I had it in like a folder. It was like one of these folders that had like a rear view mirror on it, so you could see yourself in it. Anyway, so she was cutting all the articles, and Kirby Puckett was my favorite player, and they ended up winning. And the story goes, I don't remember this part specifically, but the story goes that as soon as they won the last game, I told my dad, I was like, hey, can we go out and play catch? And I had never played sports before. My dad was like a 3-sport athlete in high school. He played football in college a little bit, and played, like, I grew up going to his softball games and touch football games and stuff, but I had never like started. And so when the Twins won the World Series, that was kind of like my first entry into sports. I was like, hey, I want to go do that. And so that was super cool. So very vivid memory for me.
Wow. And that is unique for sure. I remember my family was big into tennis, and we would watch like Wimbledon on TV. And I felt like if I went out and played after that, I would play way better. I'd be like, I want to hit it. Just
getting all the shots.
Yeah. So then you play catch with your dad. You had this moment.
Yeah.
What happened?
Actually got a black eye. The first time, so I'm playing catch. We used to play catch with tennis balls. And then after a little while, like, my neighbors were like, oh, you're good enough for a baseball. And like the first throw, boom, black eye. And so I go in the house and I got a picture. My parents still have a picture of me like with a baseball bat sitting in the corner with this black eye. And then I was like, all right, Dad, I need to go play catch again. It was dark out, and he's like he's like throwing pop-ups, and I'm looking at it, and then all of a sudden he like fakes a pop-up and throws it at me. It's dark out, I can't see, smokes me right in the same black eye. We just kept going. Like, it hurt, but I was like, whatever, like, can we just throw pop-ups now though? So then started playing, I actually started playing soccer, and then played baseball, and then basketball, I think, started. And then once I got to high school, I had played soccer my whole life, and then kids were like making fun of me, and they're like, "You're the only kid that's gonna play soccer, basketball, and baseball. Like, you need to play football." And I was like, "Fine." So I go out and play football my first year as a freshman, and I'm playing quarterback, but I was playing defensive back, and I come up and make a tackle on this huge kid, and I fractured my shoulder.
Ooh.
First game. And my mom was like, "I knew you should have kept playing soccer." And so I played football, basketball, and baseball in high school, loved it. Never really got a bunch of time off. And like my wife now is like, "Oh, you're always doing stuff." And I was like, "Well, in high school, from my sophomore year on, I had like maybe 2 weeks of break time because we were decent in some sports, and like it went from sport to sport to sport. And so I loved doing that. Got to be on a really good basketball team my senior year. Made the state tournament my junior year in football, and in baseball we made the state tournament in the summer 3 times in a row. And so got to be decently successful. Got to play with some really good players, and so my time at Richfield High School was really fun.
So backing up a little bit,
Yeah.
you play soccer your whole life, and then they put you at QB1. Like, what is that like?
Yeah, so it was really weird. Like I had always played, like we played football in the park and stuff like that, and I played baseball growing up, and so I always had a decent arm, and so like it was just kind of a natural position, I think, for me. Like that's where I wanted to be. I didn't want to be anywhere else, and so I mean, it's still just freshman football. Like it's not that big a deal, and so you're not playing like varsity football, or I wasn't playing varsity football as a freshman, and so um, I really didn't play football until my sophomore year because I fractured my shoulder in the
Right.
first game. So like I had 2 weeks of actual practice, and then I fractured my shoulder.
So had you like watched football or like play Madden, or you knew
Yeah,
you understood what to
not
do?
really. I mean, I don't think football is that complicated of a game. When you look at it, like there's a lot of complicated things, and you can get as complicated as you want, but like you're snapping the ball and you're throwing the ball and you're running the ball, and you
Yeah.
gotta obviously have guys to block. And so like as a freshman, I don't know all the minute details of steps and turns and throws and like all those things. It was just like, oh, I gotta throw to that guy. Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
um
Maybe that
and
even helped. That maybe even helped you just simplify, and not overthink it.
Yeah, because I mean, in freshman football, we had a coach that really did a good job of just simplifying things. Like, there's not that many routes. There's not many things that you have to do as a quarterback, and I think our offense was pretty easy to learn. And I wanted to learn it, so like I spent time like trying to understand, and like I had watched football growing up, and like my dad was a football player, and
Mm.
so what was interesting, he never really like said anything. Like he never made me play football, never made me like switch sports. Like he was a coach for us growing up, but like he was like we never talked really about that stuff when we were at home. It was just like, hey, we're playing sports. That's not the biggest thing in your life. So
Mm. Wow. So did you miss soccer?
I'm the only thing that I maybe missed soccer for was like there was a couple of my buddies that I had played growing up with that made the varsity team their freshman year, and I was like, yeah, I think I could have done that. And there's no real benefit, like there was no real benefit to that. It's just like, oh, you get to say that you're a varsity soccer player. So
Yeah. So you play football, basketball, baseball, have what sounds like good teams, good seasons. What does
yeah.
looking for college start to become?
Yeah, I knew that I always wanted to play sports, and I think there's a time in every athlete's life where whether you are honest with yourself or not, and some of your athletic journey, I think, depends on that. Is like being honest with yourself and figure out like where you are. Like in basketball, like I was a good basketball player. I wasn't our star. Like I was a starter on our team. We were number one in the state the whole year my senior year, and we were a good team. And I played with 3 Division I players, which made it a lot easier to be a basketball player. um, but in that, when I was maybe in 6th or 7th grade, maybe ninth grade, I don't know when it was, but I went to a Timberwolves game, and we went down on to like towards the court to like watch warm-ups. We had seats at probably like the nosebleeds, but we got there early to watch warm-ups. And I remember Steve Kerr running off the court, playing for the Bulls, or who maybe he was playing for the Spurs then. And I'm like, whoa, dude, you're huge. And he was a role player in the NBA. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm an okay basketball player, but this dude's massive and he's got an elite skill. Like, basketball is probably not it for me.
Yeah.
And so like I knew like I wanted to play, and like I thought about even playing in college a little bit, but like I knew I wasn't like a Division I basketball player. Like I that one was the earliest. I think the latest like, and then like I'm watching Boise State. They were really good when I was like junior, senior in high school, and they had like upset some teams. I was like, oh, maybe I'll walk on at a place like that, you know? And I was a decent football player, but like I had no clue. But then I kind of realized when I got to Bethel that I was like, oh yeah, this is like, these dudes are really good. And I think baseball was like the last one to kind of go in terms of having the realization that I wasn't like a professional player. I think I had some tools and things, but like hitting, like I played with a kid in high school that was probably the best player I played with, and he made it to the double A. And like I remember talking to him and I was like, you know, why'd you give it up? He's like, dude, I didn't give it up. I'm facing hitter. Like he faced like a Aroldis Chapman who was throwing like 100 miles an hour. He's like, I couldn't see it. Like I couldn't see the ball. And he's like, it wasn't a terms of, and that's where I think kids a lot of times think, well, you just try harder. Like some people have gifts that I didn't have. And there's some places where maybe if I did a little bit extra work or something, but like, it was always like, I kind of knew when the dream was like, not crushed, but like, hey, this is where you can go and you're going to do a great job of that. And that's a fun thing too.
So you said Bethel. How do you end up at Bethel in that?
Yeah, so like I was thinking, oh, I'm gonna walk on somewhere. I'm gonna walk on somewhere. I knew I wanted to play. It was kind of I knew I always wanted to play a sport in college because I just thought that would be super fun. And I went to actually a Bethel football camp as a senior, and met some of the coaches, and they started kind of recruiting me pretty good. And my sister had gone to Bethel, and I figured, okay, well, if I'm gonna go Division III, I want to play football and baseball. I want to do it at a place that shares my faith. And so like schools all over the MIAC like recruited me and a couple other places and even some for basketball. But I was like, I think I want to play football and in baseball. I think those are the two that I'm the best at. And I want to do both. And so that option I think was available to me most in a MIAC school. And then specifically like I didn't want to go to Concordia or like I wanted to go to a place that was faith-based and that was Bethel.
Yeah. So were they looking at you at quarterback? Because did you play defense in high school too?
I played a little defense. My senior year, I played like 3 or 4 possessions of defense because they're like, all right, we can't get you hurt because we didn't really have anybody else. But one of those possessions, I separated my shoulder, and so they're like, yeah, you're done playing defense. At Bethel, they recruited us. They actually, I think on the team that I came in on, I think there were 7 high school quarterbacks, and only one of us stayed at that position. There's a couple guys that moved into corner and safety like right away. I played quarterback until I think either midway through my midway through my sophomore year or junior year. I can't remember. I think it was my sophomore year, and then they changed me over to safety. So
nice.
I wasn't super pumped about the move right away because I was like, what the heck? And then I was a little like, I was a little miffed because like my buddies got to have 4 years of defense, and I thought like I was kind of behind the 8 ball because I was like, why didn't you switch me right away? And then they kind of told me like we were still looking at you to see if you could be like our starter. And so that was nice. But then like looking back, it's been so beneficial to me as a coach to have played both sides in college in both offense and defense, because now like my understanding, like I'm not some wizard, but I feel like I understand the game a lot more being able to have done that.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the glory days, football and baseball. When do you crack the lineup and what kind of teams did you guys make a run,
Sure.
etc.?
Yeah, so football, my freshman and sophomore year, we weren't very good. I didn't make the travel squad until maybe the midway through when I started playing defense my sophomore year. And then junior year, I actually kicked. I was like our extra point and field goal kicker because I had kicked in high school and I was pretty decent at it. And they're like, "Hey, can anybody do this?" Because they couldn't get a recruit, and so I kicked. I was a field goal kicker, and my buddies made fun of me because I kicked the field goal and then I would run back to the kickoff team, but I wasn't the kicker. I was a that went down to make tackles. And so they would be like, "What the heck is this dude doing?" So I kicked my junior year, and we were pretty good. We made the playoffs, got a little bit of defensive time, but not much. Had some really good safeties that played ahead of me, and so I got to play a little bit, but not much. Played all the special teams, kickoff, kick return, punt, punt return, like did all those, which was fun. And then my senior year, kind of the same role. We picked up a kicker, so I didn't have to kick anymore, which was fine with me. But my junior year, I bounced one off the goalpost to beat St. Thomas. It was a 32-yard field goal, and I hit I hit a 47-yard field goal in high school, but like 32, I hit it and it bounced off the goalpost, and we won by 3. My junior year
went in.
Oh yeah, it went in, so it hit the top of the goal, but like it hit the top of the goal or the bottom part, and then bounced through. And then I think Coach Jay was like, "Yeah, we need to get a different kicker." But I never missed an extra point, so that was part of it. And then my senior year was awesome. Like it was maybe the best experience I've had in sports. So we made it to the national semifinals and played against a team called Mount Union. We played against two National Football League players, so Pierre Garcon and Cecil Shorts. They're both receivers for Mount Union. But that was an unbelievable year because not only were we successful on the field, it was just fun to go to practice. Like we literally we had fun at practice every day. We were working for each other. We loved our buddies, and some of those guys are like they're still some of my best friends. And I don't get to see them often anymore because we all kind of have our separate lives and families and things like that. But like when we get together, it's kind of like we never skip a beat. So I had an awesome time in football, and yeah, I still remember kind of walking off the field against Mount Union in the national semifinals, and I was like, I'm like, this is it, like I'm done. And that was a tough moment for me. And then baseball, I started a little bit my freshman year, and then was a full-time starter my sophomore year in college. Played right field, and then my senior year I played center field. So we were always just like 1 or 2 games out of the playoffs in the MIAC, so the top 4 teams make it, and we never could crack it, but we were always pretty close. And again, same thing. The camaraderie of the guys was awesome, and some of those guys are still some of my best friends too.
Yeah. Was it hard for you balancing it all? Because like I know football, you have spring practice and then like workouts and all that. So
Yeah, I think our coaches did a good job of understanding because there's multiple guys that did that. So played with a couple guys, Kirby and Brandon Carr, and then Jared Bangs, and then I think that might have been all for the football, baseball guys. But they knew that we were doing both, and they were happy to have us in both, I think. And so in the fall, we just kind of like my freshman year, I would go and play fall ball because I didn't make the travel team, and so on Saturdays when they were gone, I went and played. But then after my sophomore year, like I never went to fall ball once.
yeah.
And then same thing for football. So football, we'd have practice, and then we'd have baseball practice, and then we had football practice at night at Mounds View, and it was just like it. And it could be a lot, but like I loved it. Yeah, because it was so much fun to just get out there and play with the guys and beat around the guys. And so I think some people would say that it was too much, but I would say like I just loved it. It was fun.
Yeah. I remember some of those like summer days in high school where you'd wake up, you go to football workouts, then leave there, go to hockey camp, and then, go home, eat, put on your baseball stuff,
Yeah.
and go play a baseball game. And it's like, man, those were the days for sure.
Because there's a quote that I was looking through. I took it off of Instagram, and it's like Tim Kirkajan, or what I can't remember. He's a baseball analyst for ESPN, and he's like, savor the times that you get to play baseball, because when you're done, you will miss it, and it is for sure true. Like, I don't get to go out and compete much anymore in those things, and I do miss being able to do that. The same thing, like wake up, go to strength training for football. Then I would go and, go play a baseball game. And there were some times where I'd play the baseball game and then go to open gym at night for basketball. Again, some people think that's crazy. And it was just like, that was so much fun for me.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when you want to do it, Nowadays, it's a little, you might have parents signing kids up for a million things, and it's
Yeah.
like, but when it, like, you just want to be there, yeah, it's the best time. Then you get older, you have bills, you have a job, you have all this
Right.
stuff. It's like, yeah, it's something for sure that I guess for anyone, a young athlete that would listen to this, it's
Yeah.
like really cherish that, because it's special and you are gonna miss it even if you can't. That alarm goes off and you don't want to get up, but it's something special to do with your boys, with your friends,
Yeah.
that you'll look back on forever. So
And it's hard to know during the time. Like we say that to every class that comes in, like seniors, like, this is your last time, like enjoy it, enjoy it, enjoy it. And then by the end, and I don't know if it's just being a teenager and you don't think it's going to end and you're invincible, but like, it's really hard to quantify, like, this is all I got.
yeah.
And so, and sometimes it's just like, oh man, coach was right. Like, it's going to go fast. And usually that's what ends up happening, as a teenager. Like, you don't realize how, there's a rare kid that really so savors it and soaks in the moment. There's been a couple kids on our sidelines that every once in a while I'll catch, like, just kind of looking around. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, coach, it's just a moment. And
Yeah.
it's hard to do that because, as a young kid, you think everything's going to continue. And then when it comes to an end, it's a tough one.
Yeah. So you mentioned, that last moment that you walk off the field, you'll never put on shoulder pads again, and that being hard. And then baseball, obviously, you still got to play one more year, but then that ends. So where do you go from there? Uh, Graduating, done playing. What's your next step?
Yeah, I think football is more final than everything else because, like, you don't play pickup football. Like, you can play touch football, and we played a little bit of that. It's just not the same because, like, I don't think it's like the taking off of the pads. It's more of like, you're not going to get to do this with your buddies anymore. Like, these are buddies that I put in a lot of work with, a lot of time, a lot of hard stuff, and that's over the course of 4 years, and then it's just done. And so, like, taking off the pad, that's the realization, is like, you don't get to be in that same, like, competitive environment as your buddies, and like, you're with your friends all the time, but you're not in that same environment. And so I think that's what makes it special, and that's what makes it sad. And then basketball, like, I played pickup basketball, picked up basketball with friends. And so that was like, it was a dagger my senior year because I thought we were going to be like state champions, and we came up a little bit short. And so I cried at the end of football. At the end of baseball, like, I knew, like, I was going to play town ball in like 2 weeks. And so it was hard because it's kind of the same thing as like, hey, these are, I'm not going to be able to play with these guys anymore. And that's sad. But I knew that it was going to continue to go just a little bit further. And so, and you kind of get that a little bit with softball. Softball's not the same, but like, I pick up basketball a little bit, and every once in a while I get invited to a softball game. And so you know, like that's the tough part, just not being with your buddies. But then moving on after that, I was like, all right, I don't want to be a football coach. I want to maybe coach baseball and think about basketball, and so I took a year off, and in that year coached at Coon Rapids, and then at Mounds View, coached basketball at Coon Rapids, baseball at Mounds View. That's when I met you. And then after that year, went out to the University of Washington, and then came back and no, wait. So sorry, I graduated from Bethel and then didn't coach that year, and then went to the University of Washington, then came back and coached you guys. Then went to Tulsa, did some coaching there, and then came back to Richfield.
So pausing for the funny story. You're coaching me, you and this other guy. Were you
Yep.
guys friends?
Yep, Kirk Darling.
Yeah.
Kirk played baseball with me at Bethel.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we're coaching JV baseball at Mounds View.
Yep.
I was a head coach for the first time.
And so one day we show up at practice and they're like, I think we had lost a game, and they're like, you guys are soft. Like,
yep, you guys were so soft.
And they're like, oh, we need to toughen you guys up. So Kirk is gonna catch.
And we're like, Kirk's like a year out of college. I'm 2 years out of college, and so we're still like, oh, we could do all this stuff.
So you pitch, Kirk catches, and you guys trash talk the whole time. And just
blatantly, like, openly.
Yeah, just me, just like before the pitch comes, like strike three. Just like trying their absolute hardest against
to get you mentally ready for future games.
So that must have been fun for you guys. I know that you ended up beating me, which I felt good about. I felt like I won. You know, I got a free base, and I acted like it didn't hurt. So
I'm pretty sure I think I struck out probably 15 out of 16 batters that day.
Yeah.
I don't know that anybody got a hit.
Hey, I got first base, so
you got a hit and run.
Yeah.
Hit and run to first base.
Man. So we'll get into
I would probably get fired now for doing stuff like that. Probably. Especially at Mounds View.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I still remember that though to this day, and remember being like kind of mad, like these guys are jerks, but like maybe it actually did help our team. And I remember that year we had so much fun. Like it was actually my last year of baseball, and yeah, and my two best friends at the time. That was all our last year, and we still to this day, like when we get together, we reminisce about that. So
Kirk and I had a blast. I remember like just being in the dugout, and we just smiled a lot. And you guys did awesome, and I think we improved throughout the year and got better towards the end, and so that was super fun. And like you said, we had a blast.
And even contrasting it, my sophomore year, we had a coach who won't be named, but it was not very fun. Like he took it super serious, and I get that because like I'm competitive and I want to win, but like was always talking down to guys, and like we would lose games, and then he would make us run sprints on the field after we lost, and all our parents are like waiting, like,
what? That'll teach you to play better. Let's run sprints after we just lost.
Right. I feel like it has to be, yes, you want to win, you want to do good, but it has to be fun and enjoyable. And maybe with that, like, you can talk a little bit about your coaching philosophy that you take now.
Yeah, I think kind of developed over the course of a bunch of years, and I think I'm a different coach now than I was then. Being a head coach is a little bit more difficult at like a of a program. It's probably a little bit more difficult to be that, and so a lot of my assistants take on that role. I got to be a lot in the details and all those things. I think in basketball and baseball, I get to be that same coach, and not that I'm portraying somebody different, um, but like as a head coach, like I have to deal with discipline, like I have to do all that stuff. Whereas an assistant coach or even a head JV coach, like I can say, "Hey, coach, this is what happened," and then he's gonna have to make a decision, or he or she, and so I think my philosophy is not only created by some of the coaches that I had, that I love, but also created by some of the coaches that I had and didn't like as much. And so like learning from both, like learning things like, hey, if I become a head coach, like this is what I want to do. This is not what I want to do. And so one of the things that we do at Richfield, or like the Minnesota State High School League, has you develop like a purpose of why you coach. And mine is, if I remember it, hopefully I better. Uh, it is I coach and teach to help students become people of integrity who selflessly serve others with determination while determining or with perseverance while determining a better future for themselves and others. And so one of those things that's in there is like selflessness. And so I want to like show kids that I will do anything for them, so that hopefully then that rubs off on them and they do anything for their teammates. And so I want to serve them, and it's not unlike, and I know we'll get into some of this, but it's not unlike, like I want to be the Jesus that they don't see. And so being selfless to them is a way for me to do that. In a public school setting, I can't be like, hey, this is just like Christ would do. Like that's not something
Right.
that I can do. And so the best that I can do there is hopefully show them that selflessness has rewards, and selflessness is better than being selfish. I think there's definitely coaches that have put me on the path to where I am, and why I chose to have that be my purpose statement. And then also just experiences and learning and realizing like, hey, sports is awesome, and I want to be really good, and I want to coach the best that I can. And it's also not the biggest deal in our world or in my life. And so I'm going to work really hard, and I'm going to spend lots of hours doing it. And I'm going to try to make sure that our kids are doing great stuff. And then in the
Yeah.
end, it's just kind of sports. And so I think that helps me. Like my first year, we were terrible when I was a head coach, and we were 0-9. Like my record's been 0-9, 0-9, 1-8, 3-3, 4-4. So we got it kind of building, but like those first 2 years sucked. And people would call me and they'd be like, have you hid the knives in your house? I'm like, no, it's just a football game. Like, yeah, I'm working really hard, and I'm not seeing the fruits of our labor. Like, but in the end, it's just a game. And so I think a little bit of that has helped me to be a coach, to kind of brush those things off. And it's not like I've lost competitiveness, but like you got to realize that it is just a game.
Yeah. Well, it's cool even to you mention your dad, him being an athlete and a football player, but he didn't, or even him coaching, and he's coaching, but when you get home, he's your dad. And just seeing that example, I think it's cool to see how that has influenced your coaching. And unfortunately, it can be the opposite, right?
For
It
sure.
can be like the parent cares about the sport more than they care about, you know, the person of.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone intentionally does that, but
Comes out
it
that
can
way.
creep in, right? And so I love that you coach basketball and baseball too.
Yep. So I coached seventh grade. And this last year, the last 3 years I did seventh grade, and then eighth grade, and then back to seventh grade traveling basketball. And then I've been a varsity assistant coach for baseball for I think 7 years, and then this last year I was the JV assistant coach.
Hmm. So you mentioned, your coaching philosophy, your purpose statement, it comes from your faith in Christ, even if you can't be in public school preaching or, talk to me about your faith journey, just growing up and kind of where it became more real to you and what it means to you now.
Yeah, so growing up, I grew up in a Christian household and went to church every Sunday, and then we did like tree climbers, which is like a Christian version of Boy Scouts, on Wednesdays, I believe. And then once I started going to church, we moved to Richfield, and I started going to church like 3 hours a day, or 3 hour, not a day, but on Sundays I would go to like a youth group thing, and then I'd go to Sunday school, and then I'd go to choir practice. And I was like, oh, this is like me just doing stuff is what it means to be a Christian. Like I was there and doing stuff and being there on Sundays and doing all the right stuff, because God doesn't like it when you do this or that, and so I didn't want to do this or that, and so I was trying to stay away from all the bad stuff and do all the good stuff. And that's kind of what I thought my faith was growing up, and didn't really know any different. And I can't remember how old I was, but I remember one day, and I don't know if they had planned this or not, but my dad walked me over to one of my buddies' house, and his dad was there, and we were talking about baseball, because we were both on the same baseball team. And then at one point, I think the other dad said, "So Chris, have you like accepted Jesus into your life?" And I was like, I'm thinking to myself, no, like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Like, and I don't remember this moment very clearly, because it was probably a little bit of a blur. And I was like, no, but what do you mean? What do you do? And he's like, well, you just got to kind of like talk to Jesus and say that you believe what he did. And like, I knew enough to know like what that, in terms of like what he did dying on the cross for us. But I don't know that I fully comprehended that until probably sometime in college, or even after, like what that actually means, and still learning what that means for me. And so we were walking home, and like I accepted Christ into my heart, and like there's always this moment of thinking like, oh, I'm going to be so different. and I'm not. And so it was like, oh, okay, well then I just keep doing the right things and avoid all the bad things. And I get to Bethel, or in high school, and I was known as a good kid, and that was probably a good thing, because I think people shielded me from some things that they're like, oh no, you shouldn't be doing this. And I'm like, well, why can't I? And they're like, no, you're a good kid, you don't do this kind of stuff. And I was like, okay. And my friends were great in that, because they probably did shield me from some things that I shouldn't have been doing. And so I get to Bethel, and I still think it's okay. I got to have the rules, and I got to do this, and I can't do that. And start to learn a little bit, maybe that's not what it's about, which was a good thing for me. And so that's where I was at my faith as I developed. And I think a big part of that was being a football player at Bethel, and learning from some really good men that your faith isn't about being right and wrong. It's about having a relationship. And I don't know that I still, or if I understood that yet. I think I had a different concept of like right and wrong isn't like doing good and doing bad. It's not like that's what he's looking for, but it was still like I was still putting it on like scales. Like if I do this good and some bad, like it'll even out, and I just need to be like on the good side at the end. And that's kind of a simplification of what I thought my faith was, but
yeah.
And so then from Bethel, I think I learned a lot more about who God was, but I didn't know who that was in my own life yet, and what that meant for me in terms of what Christ's sacrifice meant for me on the whole. And so then, kind of going through my faith, and then the first time I'm really alone in my faith was in Oklahoma. So I went to Teach for America, and I'm in a place where I don't really know many Christians, and the people that I'm living with aren't, and it like some of the things that we went out and did just started to get old for me. Like we went out and we would go out and go to bars and restaurants and things like that, and I was always kind of like the DD, and well, my friends were getting kind of smashed, and I was like, this just isn't that awesome. It's not that fun. And so it got old, and I was like, all right, how can I seek people that believe like I do? And so I got involved in Young Life in Oklahoma selfishly. I was like, I need to meet Christian people that are my age. It wasn't about the kids. It was just like, I need to find some Christian people. And in the end, that was something that blessed me beyond my best imagination, because I met friends for a lifetime in that, and found so much more about Christ, and in the end got to serve a lot of kids, which was awesome too.
Yeah.
And so I would really say that then I moved back home, kind of struggling to find a church that I liked and to go to. And I think that's when I finally learned about what grace was, and that it's not about right and wrong. It's about like having a relationship with Christ, because we're sinful and we're going to be sinful. And like God knows that. And like, I'm not hiding anything from him. He knows who I am and what I do. And the only thing that I need to go to him is be humble and say, I can't do this on my own. Like I need you.
Mm.
Um, and that's like a huge turning point, I think, in my faith walk, because there's a preacher that I listen to a lot, and he kind of transformed my ideas about what grace was and what my walk is, as opposed to what my walk isn't.
Mm.
And so very appreciative to that person, and helping me understand what, like, I was doing religion. I wasn't
Yeah.
being a Christ follower. Like I was
Mm.
doing that so I could get that.
Yeah.
And in the end, it's not that at all. It's following Christ, because he made the world and knows how it works, and
Yeah.
he's trying to help me be like more like him each and every day. And so I think that obviously my faith journey is not done, but that was a
Right.
huge turning point for me, is just finding out what grace is, and really um, what a faith walk is with Christ, as opposed to what it isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. It's you me thinking a few thoughts, and something I think about a lot is Jesus multiplying 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish to feed maybe 15,000 people. And when I think of that story, and it's funny, like you said, I went to Young Life to meet friends, essentially. Not to,
Selfishly, way selfishly, like I wanted
right.
to find Christian friends.
Yeah. But like God, he doesn't need like perfection, or he doesn't need much. Like he needed 2 fish and 5 loaves. Like God will take just what you have. And so it's not about having so much or having it all together. It's just like, hey, here's what I got. And if I give it to you, you'll use it. And
Yeah,
I think it even relates to what you said about being self-aware in your sport. Like you just realize, like, okay, like I'm good, but I'm not playing in the NFL. Like I'm just literally not gifted to that level. So then you make the most out of what you are.
yeah,
And even in our faith, it's just about saying like, yeah, I can't I can't inherently be good, be better than I am bad, because I know in my heart like I'm
I'm
selfish
sinful.
and sinful, right? So I need it's self-awareness, and it's freeing. Um Also, the other thing you said that got me thinking is when we're growing up, it's like, okay, God, we equate God to a list of do's and don'ts often, but it's usually like, don't have sex, don't get drunk, don't kill anyone. Like,
Those are the big ones.
right. But it's funny just actually like reading the Bible is like, we don't talk that much about like, in this list is like, love your neighbor, love your enemies, like give, be humble, and put others above yourself. Like, that's also like on the list. So we just
Right.
so often emphasize these certain sins, and it's like, yeah, you shouldn't, I'm an advocate for waiting for marriage. Like, I think that's the best option, spiritually and just socially and emotionally and mentally.
Hmm.
But it's like, God is way bigger than a list of a few do's and don'ts. And
Right.
I love that you put it in terms of relationship, um, being informed by that relationship of how I live every day. And that's so good.
I think like one of the things that I realized too in terms of grace and like God is if we believe in Christ and believe in God, then like we believe that He is all knowing, all powerful, and created the world, and in that then created the world in a certain way and how it should flow and work. And so like if we go against like that flow, it's going to cause some problems. And so like yes, it's a list of do's and don'ts, but it's not like a list to like bring you into begrudging submission. Like don't do this, don't do this, don't do this because you shouldn't do it. He's saying those things because he created the world and he knows how it flows best and he knows how like to create your joy the most. And
Yeah.
so the list is for your joy, not your like, oh, this is terrible. Because he
Yeah.
again, he created the world, he knows how it should run. And so when those things are on the list, it's like this is what leads you into life. Being selfless leads you into life. Not having sex before marriage leads you into life.
Mm.
Uh, like not going too far in terms of drinking and smoking, like leads you into life because that's what he created, and so he knows what's going on. Now the other part is like people do that, and the awesome part is he forgives those people. And so that's
Yeah.
something that like I struggled with a lot is like I have sin in my life and like how can he still be like he knows me and he's still saving me, which is a mind-blowing thing,
Mm.
is that he knows all the dirty things that I have in me, all the sin, all the lust, the anger, the like revenge that I want. He knows all those things and still chooses to save me in my worst self. And so like that creates like, oh man, I'm not worthy of this. But that's not like how he wants you to feel. He's like, I want you to know that you're my son still, my daughter. And
Yeah.
that's super cool for me. And I think that's one of the bigger things that I've learned in the last couple of years of my walk is like, yes, we need to repent of the sin that we have in our life and be humbled by that because we're not perfect. And then also growing in the joy that he has saved me from that and that he's going to continue to save me from those things.
Yeah.
And so like the humbleness and the joy kind of like back to back, because usually I get humbled and I'm just like down in the dumps and I'm like, oh, I can't, like, I'm not worthy of this. And I'm not, but it's not like he like he's choosing me still. And
Yeah.
so it's super cool to have that like, okay, I need to be humble because I am sinful, but I also need to grow in my joy because he continues to save me from my sin and he still
Right.
loves me.
Yeah. And when you see yourself in that light, it frees you to see other people in that light. Like, I don't need to be the one pointing out everyone's sin. And
Right.
it's like, if God looks at me, sees my sin, and loves me and saves me and enables me to have joy, I can look at other people that same way and know,
And it's
like,
so freeing that way
yeah,
for
yeah,
both you and the other person, because then you're not out there judging people. It's like, oh, you like, go to God. I'm
yeah,
not here to judge you. Like, I'm not here to point the finger at you, like you talked about. Like, it's so much more freeing and able to live. Like, again, he's created a way in which the world should work,
yeah,
and it's not pointing fingers at other people.
right,
And so it just steals your joy when you do that.
right. And it doesn't mean like, okay, I don't stick to my convictions or I don't stand for truth, or, if you ask me, like, maybe I have some unpopular beliefs, and if you ask me, like, I'll tell you the truth in love. But yeah, you don't have to be out banging everyone on the head, like. And the what I love with the rules made for you idea, I always equate it to a basketball game. And imagine in basketball you have out of bounds, fouling, traveling, goaltending. And if you didn't have those, the game would be chaos. It would
Terrible.
not
It'd
be
be a
fun.
terrible game to watch. Nobody would want to
Yeah,
play it or watch it.
right. So it's like the boundaries make it, and the rules are for the ultimate enjoyment of the game. And
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, when you start to see like God's ways that way, it's like, okay, I should follow this, like, because
And that's
it's
still
the
hard.
best. Yeah, and it's still hard even knowing that.
And the other
Eh,
one, like with that too, is like, I think as a kid and as my personality type, I've always wanted it to be like perfect at stuff. Like, everything's got to be just right, and I gotta, like, I can't go to God until my heart is perfect,
hmm,
and that's definitely not what it is. Like, He wants you to come to Him as you are. Like you talked about the fish and the loaves. Like, give me what you have, and I'll do it. Like, it's me. Like, I'm the all powerful one. Like, I'll do this for you. And and then within that is like, I kind of lost my train of thought there. uh, God, what was I going to say?
fish,
Oh,
low.
oh yeah, yeah. So like, trying to be perfect, and then I think I wanted to be perfect so that other people wouldn't be like, oh, well, he's doing that, so if he's a Christian and he's doing that, like, he's not a Christian, or like, that's such a bad example of a Christian. And one of the things that the pastor that I talked about that helped me with a lot is, no, you don't have to be perfect. When somebody like says like, oh man, you're such a hypocrite, you profess that you should be kind and loving and you're not, and I'm like, man, you're right, I'm not. And isn't it great that I have a God that still loves me and forgives me for those things? And so
Hmm,
I think that took a lot of pressure off, like, who I had to be, or like this persona I think that I had created, in terms of being like the good kid, or like, I always do the right thing. And it's like, well, no, I don't. Like, I do bad stuff all the time. Like, not, like, I sin all the time. And so realizing like the the reaction to somebody saying that I'm a hypocrite isn't, no, I'm not, I do all the right stuff, is, yeah, I definitely am. Man, I'm such a hypocrite. I just talked about being happy and joyful, and I was mean and angry. Like, I'm
yeah.
definitely a hypocrite. Thank you for calling me out on that. Like, isn't it? And then the real reaction is, isn't it great that I have a God that still loves me?
Mm,
And so that was so freeing for me, because I was like, I don't have to be this perfect person, this persona of a Christian, like the Ned Flanders in Simpsons, like, oh, golly gee williker. Like, no, it's not, like, that's not how life works. And so it was super freeing to be able to have that too.
yeah, that's good. Um, yeah, and that's the big heart behind this podcast and stuff, is like, yeah, you don't have to be Ned Flanders. Tell me you younger hearers may not know who Ned Flanders is, but he's like the typical nerdy, like uptight Christian guy. And like what what wasn't always communicated to me or maybe I just didn't see it, was like I can love my sport and I can love God. Or like you don't have to, God doesn't want to take away who you are. He wants to take who you are and your gifts and then just align it with his purpose for your life. And that's a big part of why I even started this podcast. And I want to transition and talk about, there are so many lessons that we learn playing sports. But this podcast is about how sports really help us in life. So if you could pick one sports lesson that you've seen overflow into your life, what would that be?
Yeah, two things. One, you kind of talked about like God doesn't want to change you. There's a famous quote by this runner, and he talks about like when I run, I feel God's pleasure. Like He created you to have those gifts and enjoy the things that He's made, like baseball and football and basketball and soccer and tennis. Like those things, like He created for you and your joy. Anyway, I think the lesson that I've learned in sports, and this comes from Bethel football stuff, is and Coach Jay, he always talked about giving your heart away for free, knowing that in the end it might be broken. And so what that means for me, or what that meant for us, is put everything you got into it, knowing that at the end of the game you might lose. You might lose. Like your heart's going to get broken. Like that that's going to happen. Like you're not going to win them all. You're not going to fight every battle and win them. And so like giving your heart away for free, knowing that at the end you might get it broken. Like and because of the value of that, giving it away to your buddies, giving it away to the game, giving it away in the weight room, like that creates such a passionate like thing in you. And then yeah, it might hurt real bad at the end. Like I cried at the end of my senior basketball and senior in football. Like it hurt, but if I don't do those things, then it won't hurt. Like it's almost not worth it. And so give your heart away for free, knowing in the end it might get broken. And that's a vulnerable thing, to like put yourself out there, to give yourself away to friends, to give yourself away to the game, to give yourself away to the work. And then in the end, maybe you don't get that starting spot, or maybe you don't get the win that you wanted, or win the championship. And I think it's the same thing like in relationships. It's the same thing in your job. Like not everything's always going to go your way, but it's so much more rewarding when you work hard at it, when you give yourself away. Like I remember when I was a kid and thought relationships were super awesome, and dating people, like dating these girls, and there's a girl that I dated, and she crushed me. she she broke up with me and through email, and then also said that she had been seeing another person. And I'm like, oh my gosh! And I was just like, I was murdered. And my dad was like, maybe you shouldn't jump in as hard. And I was like, I don't know another way to do it. Like, because if you don't like it, then it doesn't feel like it's worth it. The other person doesn't get to know you fully. You don't get to reap the rewards if it does work out. And so I think that's one of the lessons that I've got from sports that has led me into life. And even now, like we're like my first year being the head coach, we were in it was like 0-9, 0-9, 1-8. We win our first game my third year, and I'm like, all right, we got it. And then we lost the next 8. And then we went 3-3 during COVID, and now last year we went 4-4. And I'm like, I wouldn't change it. Like I put everything that I had. I wasn't like, oh, like we're gonna lose, like so I'm not gonna, like I worked really hard. And probably as the year got longer, I worked even harder. And it was worth it. Like I love doing it, and I love pouring into kids, and so in the end, when the season was over, like it was tough. Even though we hadn't won anything, like we like giving my heart away for free, knowing the end that it might get broken was a great lesson for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say I love hearing you say that lesson in light of what you said about your record, because like I'm sure you gave it all and went 0-9, and like
It sucked.
that's tough. But like, at the end of the day, you can be okay with that if you
Right. No
know.
regrets. I did everything that I could.
Yeah, and then if you do it that way, you see the progression, right? 0-9, 1-8, 3-3, 4-4, and it's like it's not even about, I talk a lot about like process over product. Like
Oh
it's
yeah.
not about the product. Like, even if you commit to the process, like your product naturally will eventually catch up. Um, but even if it doesn't, knowing that you gave it all
Right.
is where you can hang your hat for sure.
Which is kind of what John Wooden talks about, is like doing your best to be your best. And we define that as success in our football program as the worthy pursuit of a worthy goal. So we want to win our first game this year. We want to win our first game. Seniors want to win homecoming. They want to win the Twin City District, which we're in, Twin City District Gold, and then they want to win their last game. And we might lose those, but like losing doesn't make you a loser, because if we define success as doing your best to be your best, so you've done everything you can to win, well, the other team practices too. And so that's probably a second lesson that I've learned, is like the other team practices too. You can do your best and still lose. And if you have done everything that you can, then you don't need to have regrets, which is hard. But like, you don't, like, you can look back and say, I did everything that I could, and they just beat us.
Yeah, that's good. You're on the Dear Young Athlete podcast, so you need to complete the statement. Dear young athlete, what would you say to your players, to the younger Kris Pulford?
Yeah. A big thing for me is identity. And so this is what I would say is, dear young athlete, your faith should allow you to play free on the field. Your identity is in Christ. So if you drop a pass or get an F on a test, that doesn't define who you are. You're a child of God. So go have fun, be your best, and know that you are defined by your faith and not how good you are at sports.
Amen. And go try and be your best. Do the best you can.
Right.
And know that that's not your ultimate identity. So
yeah,
that's good. Any last words for the people?
No, it's been fun talking to you, man. It's good to connect with you again after so many years, and thinking I was a terrible coach, and maybe I was, and maybe I still am, and that's okay. And like you said there, I think going out there, do your best is all that you can do. And I think that's when you believe your identity in Christ is the biggest thing, then it's a lot less difficult to fail, because it's not who you are. If you fail, it's that you're still a child of God, and in the end, He doesn't care if you dropped a pass. He just wants you. So,
amen. Well, that's a good word to end on. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time.
Yeah,
and
it was fun.
Yeah, anyone who listens, this will be definitely an encouragement and a resource for them. So thank you for sharing with us.
Yeah.
Peace.
See ya.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to the Dear Young Athlete podcast. Make sure you check out our website linked in the description and find out how you could bring Dear Young Athlete to your team or your group. Check out our merchandise and use code all caps DYA20 and take 20% off your first order. Also, consider partnering with us on Patreon. You'll get regular discounts, you'll get exclusive content, and you'll be supporting a great movement. Wherever you're listening, make sure you follow and leave us a review. It really helps the algorithm and helps this podcast reach more people. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next episode. Peace.